There are two absolutely tremendous new features in the new update to the Steam Deck. They're both somewhat niche, but I belong in both of these niches, so I am incredibly excited about both of these. We're also going to dig into the details about a Steamy Lawsuit and talk about some really huge milestones for Steam and the Steam Deck, the launch of the MSI Claw, not to mention why Valve is not yet done with the Steam Deck. I also want to talk about my game of the week, but that'll have to wait until the end of the video. Anyway, about this update, the first big update is Steam Families. This is a huge update to Steam Family Sharing. It makes it better than it's ever been and arguably the best family sharing on any platform. You can have up to 6 members in your family, you get parental controls that allow you to set limits and schedules, and the ability to monitor playtime on your phone. Kids can also do purchase requests, which you will see on your computer or on your phone as well. But best of all is that when a family member is playing a borrowed game, it no longer locks your entire library. Previously, if my son was playing Hades and I wanted to play Balatro and both were in my library, I would have to go offline so that we could both play at the same time. As a result, most of my playtime ended up being offline. But now, multiple members can be playing games in your library and all of you can be online so long as 2 people aren't playing the same game. Or more specifically, the same copy of the same game. Let's say 2 of the 6 family members own Huntdown, which is currently on sale for $4 by the way. Well, any 2 of your family members could play Huntdown and still play online since the family owns 2 copies. Honestly, this is a big quality of life improvement for my family, and I suspect many Steam Deck owners are parents and are going to benefit from a feature like this as well. The next big update is for Gyro. Gyro has slowly but surely been taking over my timeline, and it seems like more and more people are learning that it's a great addition to your FPS repertoire. Well, the March 18th client beta also added some new features to Gyro, including the ability to choose from a combination of buttons to enable Gyro. So now, enabling Gyro can be mapped to pressing both of the analog sticks in, or pressing L1 and R1 at the same time, or pressing 2 face buttons at the same time. For me, I'm fine with just using stick touch as my Gyro enable button, but this may be better for people that are still getting used to Gyro aiming. They also added a default bind for the new recenter or reset horizon action, so if you're using flick stick and click the right stick in twice, it's going to recenter the camera for you. Nifty. You know, funny enough, Tim Sweeney seemed to credit himself for Valve's new family sharing functionality. That is reason enough for me to talk about today's next topic. You mad, bro? I love it when game companies get sassy. As you know, Valve is notoriously reserved with their communications, so whenever there's a chance to get a peek at their internal emails, you are guaranteed to find something juicy, and that's exactly what happened last week when some new documents were made public in the ongoing Valve versus Wolfire antitrust lawsuit. There are some really fun tidbits in here, and ultimately it doesn't seem like it's going to be enough for Wolfire to win their suit against the Steamy Goliath, but we will get into all of that. A lot of the following detail comes courtesy of the Game Discover Code newsletter. The staff at Game Discover Code usually surface some really intriguing insights about game discoverability by mining the data that is available from Steam. But this is a little bit different. Now that the Wolfire versus Valve suit has entered discovery, some redacted documents have been made public, and this time the staff pored over these docs to find some juicy details. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Wolfire versus Valve, Wolfire, a small game developer, is asserting that Valve is taking away freedoms from consumers, game developers, and competing stores by essentially price fixing and ensuring that developers cannot price games for lower on a non-Steam store than they can on Steam. This is actually one of the biggest things that comes up whenever I talk about Epic Game Store versus Steam. Like, if I mention that Epic only charges a 12% fee, whereas Steam charges 30%, many people in the comments are going to ask, why don't game devs pass on that savings to the consumer and launch their game for much cheaper on the Epic Game Store? Well, this lawsuit seems to allege that those game developers simply don't have that option. They're not able to do that due to an unwritten rule commonly known as a platform most favored nation clause that is enforced by Valve. Again, this clause would make it so that developers couldn't price their games cheaper on Epic Game Store without threat of being delisted from Steam. So that's the lawsuit in a nutshell, but the most notable storyline, of course, is Tim Sweeney's crusade against the industry standard 30% fee that is being levied by digital stores like Steam. There's an email from Gabe Newell to Tim Sweeney where Gabe asks, "Anything we doing to annoy you?" Well, it turns out that earlier that day, Tim Sweeney tweeted this: "Not sure why Steam is still taking 30% of gross. MasterCard and Visa charge 2 to 5% per transaction, and CDN bandwidth is around 0.2 of a penny per gigabyte. In that initial email to Tim, Gabe also said, "We're guessing Sean Jenkins' public dumbness might be part of it." Sean Jenkins was a software engineer at Valve that had just finished posting something on the Steam forums saying that they would deny key requests that weren't worth it to Valve or to Steam. He said, "At some point, we start deciding that the value you're bringing to Steam isn't worth the cost to us. For example, say you've sold a few thousand copies on Steam, but have requested or activated 500,000 keys. Then we're going to take a deeper look at your games, your sales, your costs, etc." In any case, Tim Sweeney said he hadn't heard of Jenkins, but that generally the economics of these 30% platform fees are no longer justifiable. There was a good case for them in the early days, but the scale is now high and operating costs have been driven down, while the churn of new game releases is so fast that the brief marketing or user acquisition value the storefront provides is far disproportionate to that fee. If you subtract out the top 25 games on Steam, I bet Valve made more profit off the next 1,000 than the developers themselves made. End quote. Tim closes the email by saying he believes the question of why distribution still takes 30% on the open PC platform on the open internet is a healthy topic for public discourse. Over a year later, when it's revealed that Steam would reduce its 30% cut, but only for top earners, Tim Sweeney is even more upset, saying, quote, "Right now, you assholes are telling the world that the strong and powerful get special terms, while 30% is for the little people. Why not give all developers a better deal?" From there, it looks like Tim's passion was funny enough to COO of Valve, Scott Lynch, because Scott replied internally to Gabe and Eric Johnson with a simple, "You mad, bro?" This is all pretty funny, and it doesn't seem like there's much meat on the bones of this lawsuit, so I don't expect Wolfire to win, but I will say one thing. I do wish Valve would reduce their cut for smaller developers. The Apple App Store now takes a reduced commission of 15% for developers that earn less than $1 million in revenue, and that seems like it would be a step in the right direction for Steam. What do you think? Is there anything you'd like to see Valve do better here? Let me know in the comments, and before we go to the next section, let me tell you about today's sponsor. Regardless of whether you're Deck Gang or an ROG ally or a Lenovo Legionite, today's sponsor JSAUX is going to be a good companion. This is their latest RGB dock, and it's got everything you need, including a port for Ethernet, an audio jack, HDMI, DisplayPort, an additional USB-C port, and 3 USB-A ports. On top, it even has an SD card slot as well as a micro SD card slot. This thing is a Swiss Army knife for your PC handheld or even your laptop. Don't worry about taking advantage of your TVs or monitors features, because it supports HDR, VRR, not to mention auto low latency mode and quick frame transport for the lowest possible latency when gaming. Whether you're using HDMI or DisplayPort, you'll be able to output up to 4K at 120 Hz. And don't forget, the RGB dock has RGB. You can program it using 6 built-in modes, so you can always choose how to light your gaming cave. Of course, you can also just hold the button on top to turn off the RGB altogether. So be sure to use my link in the description to pick up this new RGB dock and help support my channel. Thanks to JSAUX for sponsoring this video. A public general use SteamOS image is finally here. Well, sort of. I've talked about Bazzite a few times on this channel, but Bazzite just celebrated their 2.4 release, and it is a big one. Notably, Steam Deck HQ and Gaming on Linux have both reported that this release fixes some of the recent suspend resume issues that were encountered on the ROG Ally and the Lenovo Legion Go. And to be honest, I hadn't tried Bazzite since I first saw High Tech Low Life cover it on his channel a few months ago. I liked what I saw then, but it was still too early for it to be my daily driver. Now, after installing it again and seeing how it's progressed for the Lenovo Legion Go specifically, I'm pretty excited to give this a go for a few weeks and see if it changes any of my gaming habits. I followed a guide that I'll leave a link to in the description, but the install was pretty easy overall. I can now dual boot between this and Windows, and it's using BetterFS, so it should make it easy to switch between the two systems, but I mostly want to stick to Bazzite since I prefer the no-fuss interface and I mostly stick to Steam games anyway. My impression after the first couple hours are good so far. Suspend resume works like a champ, onboard gyro works better than it does on Windows, and TDP controls and performance overlay seem to work just fine. Sometimes the screen would go black when I would launch a game for the first time, and I would have to suspend then resume to get the screen back, and that was really annoying, but that can hopefully be addressed in later patches. This does feel like it goes to show that making a public general use SteamOS is just currently not that high on Valve's list of priorities. Ever since the Steam Deck was released, they have committed to making SteamOS more available to other handhelds and eventually making a general use version of the operating system, but they haven't actually done so yet. Thankfully, the community was able to step in and do what Valve didn't. Let me know if you've already given this a shot or if you plan to. Now would be a good time to point out that there is another gaming-focused distro on the horizon as well. This one is called Playtron, and it's a startup that includes the developer of Box86 as well as some devs from Chimera OS. Here's the pitch from the feature over on The Verge. Quote, "What if there were an Android of gaming? An OS you can install on any capable hardware to get a controller-friendly PC experience. Imagine an Epic deck that could actually play Fortnite, a 5G deck for cellular carriers, or maybe a PlayStation deck for Sony's growing PC ambitions." The CEO of Playtron says, "If Valve can do this with Steam, we can do this with anything." And I tend to agree. This could be a humongous play in the scene, and I could definitely see Sony or Epic eventually buying into something like this. Last week, the Steam Spring Sale went live, and Valve did something special for the Steam Deck since it's been roughly 2 years since its launch. They published the top 100 games played on the Steam Deck. Much of the top 20 to 40 games should be recognizable since we've seen them in the monthly most played games list. Those are games like Baldur's Gate 3, Vampire Survivors, Hogwarts Legacy, Elden Ring, Pal World, and Cyberpunk 2077. But there were other games in the top 100 that I found interesting. The first one that stuck out to me was Rocket League at the number 100 spot. Rocket League is honestly a perfect Steam Deck game, but it's been delisted from Steam since before the Steam Deck release, so it's interesting to see that so many Steam Deck owners happen to have this title in their library. The next two games that I found fascinating were Apex Legends and especially Counter-Strike 2. It's great that these sort of games are getting so much play on a handheld, and I'd love to know which control method the majority of people are using. How many folks are using Gyro? I would love to know. The last game I found interesting here is Street Fighter 6. SF6 is a great fighting game, and certainly there must be a lot of people playing it right now given how awesome the recent Red Bull Kumite event was. Still though, I didn't necessarily expect it to be one of the top 100 played games on deck, so that's great. Oh, I should also note that Balatro has already made it into this list at spot number 27. I've been singing Balatro's praises, and the dev team recently announced they passed 1 million units sold, so definitely check this game out if you have yet to do so. Steam itself recently broke its own record yet again. Steam has now broken its own record for number of players online 3 times in just 3 weeks. Early in March, it crossed 34 million players online, then the next week 35, and now this week it surpassed 36 million players online. This level of growth, just as console sales are starting to stall, is pretty unfathomable. This also seems to put into context a hardware survey where it looks like the Steam Deck is not growing as fast as it used to, and even lost 0.2 percentage points in last month's survey if you go by the line item for the Steam Deck's APU. Yeah, that 0.2% doesn't look so bad when you compare it to a 0.2 percentage growth in overall players on Steam. Well, again, if you go by concurrent online players. So Steam got bigger, but so did the Steam Deck too. GamingOnLinux.com has been tracking Steam Deck performance, and this chart shows that the Steam Deck itself has been a consistent top seller since its release, but it has also been doing even better since the OLED was released. For just 2024, it has been in the top 5 sellers on Steam 7 out of 10 times, even those 3 other times it was 6th, 6th, and 8th, so it continues to sell well. One fun discussion I saw in the comments of that post was how well do you think a Steam Deck 2 could sell if Valve could manage a worldwide and retail release for it? That inspired me to make this poll on my community page where it seems most people are voting that Valve would sell 5 to 10 million units. What do you think? In other news, the first impressions for the MSI Claw are available now, and I've got to say I am pretty disappointed. The titles and thumbnails of various YouTube reviews seem to tell the story thus far. Retro Game Corps was both excited and disappointed so far. Jason Whitmore expected more. CJ Knows Tech was heartbroken, and ETA Prime said the new MSI Claw is actually a fast gaming PC when you add a powerful eGPU. It's really unfortunate that it does seem it was an uphill battle from the start with these Intel APUs, and while there's hope that some software updates may improve the experience, the gap between this and handhelds with the Z1 Extreme just seemed too big to cover. Did you buy an MSI Claw? What has your experience been like? All right, there are a few big game updates. First of all, it's been reported that the Final Fantasy 16 port to PC is in the late stages of optimization. Unfortunately, we don't know how well this is going to run on PC handhelds. Not to mention, it will probably come to the Epic Games Store first, so we'll likely have to wait for this to come to Steam. Enshrouded has announced that support for the Steam Deck is on the roadmap. Enshrouded is a hugely popular survival game that is likely going to be a good fit for the Steam Deck if they can get it running nicely. According to Liam from Gaming on Linux, the current state of the game on deck is terrible, and that was him being kind. So this kind of support for the handheld is certainly going to be a welcome addition. Speaking of roadmaps, we also learned about the post-launch roadmap for Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. No announcement for a Steam release yet, but they're adding a speedrun mode and permadeath mode this month, as well as a boss rush in the next coming months. There are new combat, platforming, and puzzle trials coming in the summer, and finally some new story DLC later this year. I suspect that's going to be the earliest that we would know about a Steam release date. Likewise, Sea of Stars celebrated 5 million units sold, and the dev team let us know that they are launching a 3-player couch co-op mode that's sure to delight fans of Secret of Mana. Personally, it seems like a fun way to play this game with my 2 kids, and it might be funny to see if we all hit our cues on those time-take mechanics. Sea of Thieves was also updated, in this case to add anti-cheat, but don't worry, it's still Steam Deck compatible. Microsoft has consistently shown love to the Steam Deck, and thankfully they continue to do so with this update to their live service hit. And now let me tell you about my game of the week. I want to do a segment like this every week where I tell you about a game that was released recently that I'm enjoying on the Steam Deck, and this week it is Berserk Boy. Berserk Boy is normally $20, but you may still be able to get it for 10% off. This is an action platformer that takes inspiration from Mega Man ZX and has a soundtrack composed by T. Lopez, who worked on Sonic Mania, Shredder's Revenge, and Penny's Big Breakaway. There's a focus on close quarters combat and chaining combos, which means that even though the difficulty is modest, there's always reason to charge back in and optimize your route. There are also hostages to rescue, bonus badges to gain, and overall plenty of replayability factor. I do think it's a little too easy, and the forums could have provided even more variety to the movement and combat mechanics. As it is, it does still feel a little one-dimensional despite that replayability. But it is entirely my kind of jam, and it's the only game that's been able to pull me away, even briefly, from Balatro, so there's that. That gang, it's been a fun week for the Steam Deck and PC handhelds. Let me know what you think about the news stories like the Wolfire lawsuit or Bazzite hitting their 2.4 release. And don't forget to check out the JSAUX RGB dock using my links in the description. I hope you're all having a wonderful week. That gang out. Goodbye.